Hi guys, today we're going to talk about how to create and how to read a histogram. So a histogram tells us the number of times a number occurs within a given interval. So with this example, we're analyzing how many chocolate candies are in a bag of trail mix. To make a histogram, we look at frequency. So our first step is to make a frequency table. Now, you don't have to do this, but I like to make tallies to start and then add up my tallies at the end in a frequency table, just so I can cross it out one at a time. So for example, with 50, I'm going to cross out 50, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put a tally in the interval of 40 to 60. Now, you can recognize that the intervals are going up by 20s. What that tells us actually is that our bin width, which we're going to talk about this in a little bit, equals 20 because we're going up by 20s. So I'm just going to keep going by crossing stuff out. So our next number is 42. So that's going to be between 40 and 60. Now with 100, we need to determine which bin we're going to put that in, or what interval we're going to put that in. It doesn't matter as long as you stay consistent. If I put 100 in the 80 to 100 category, that means I would have to put 80 in the 60 to 80 category. I would have to put 60 in the 40 to 60 category. If I put it in the 100 to 120, which I am going to do, that means I would have to put 80 in the 80 to 100, 60 in the 60 to 80. As long as you remain consistent, you can put it in whatever bin you want to. Now 45, we have 68, 32. There's 100 again, so we got to make sure we stay consistent and we put that with the other one. We have 67, 61, 31, 75, 39, and we're just going to place every single number in this frequency table in order to know how many times a number occurred in that interval. All right, 51, 33, 99, 96, and then 64. All right, so now I always like to draw a line, and then I'm going to put my totals on the other side of that line. So I had 4 here, I had 6, 7, 2, and 2, and 0 up here. Now, a good way to check to make sure that you got every single number is to add them up. So we have 0 plus 4 is 4, plus 6 is 10, 10 plus 7 is 17, 17 plus 4 is 21. So we have 21 total values here. And you can see here that this is a 3 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And 3 times 7 equals 21, which means we placed all of our values. All right, so now that we have the frequency, the number of times the numbers occur in each individual interval, we can create our histogram. So just like the graphs we did in moving straight ahead, we need to have a title. So I'm going to say chocolate candies. You could have also said, I don't know, trail mix if you wanted to. As long as it has something to do with the problem, you're good. you need to have a scale. So on our x-axis, we are going to have the number of chocolate candies per bag of trail mix. This is our intervals. So 0 to 20 or 1 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, 80 to 100, 100 to 120. And then the frequency, which is the number of times it occurs, which are going to be these values that we found. And that's going to determine how tall our bin is. So, for example, our bin for this first one is 0. So it's not going to be any certain height at all. It's going to be just, we're going to leave it. Now 20 to 40, we have a bin height of 4. That means there was 4 numbers that fell between 20 and 40. So I'm going to go up all the way to 4, and I'm going to come back down. And there is my first bin. My second bin is going to go all the way up to 6. So I'm going to go up and all the way down. Notice how our bins are touching. Unlike a bar graph, our bins are going to touch when we do histograms. Our next one is 7, so we're going to go up to 7 and down. And then we have 2 and 2. So right here is our histogram. Now, if you were just given a histogram, some questions you might be asked is, what is the bin width? So one question would be like, what is the bin width? Now, when you're asked, what is the bin width? They're just asking for, what is the interval length? So every single time, since we're going up by 20, our bin width is 20. Another question you could be asked about a histogram when given a histogram would be, for example, how many bags had 80 or less of chocolate candies? Now with that question, we would want to, right here is our 80, so I'm just going to draw a line straight up, and then I'm going to add the frequency heights of my bin all the way over. So this one was 7, this one was 6, and this one was 4. So the answer to this question would be 7 plus 6 plus 4, which is 17. So 17 bags had 80 chocolate candies or less for this problem. Now, some of you might be a little bit confused because this kind of looks like a bar graph. Our bins aren't bars though. So some differences between bar graphs and histograms. This is just a basic comparison. So for histograms refer to a graphical representation that displays data by ways of bars. And I'm actually going to cross that out. I did not agree with this table. That should say bins, not bars, to show the frequency of numerical data. Why a bar graph is a pictorial representation of data that uses bars to compare different categories. That's the big difference, guys. For histograms, we're always looking at quantitative data, which is just a big word for numbers. We're looking at data that was collected using numbers. For a bar graph, you're looking at categories. For example, a category could be how many different people like a certain color. I could have blue, purple, red, and we could vote, and then that would make a bar graph rather than a histogram. And then finally, I want to talk about the spaces. I mentioned this before. The bars are going to touch each other in a histogram, and I'm going to cross out bars, and I'm going to write bins again. The bins are going to touch each other, so there's no spaces. However, in a bar graph, they're not going to touch each other, so there's going to be spaces between the bars. So that's just a simple comparison chart of the differences between histograms and bar graphs. So be very careful when you're analyzing your histograms, and go ahead and get started on the practice problems.